lying people. We're not true. We're not really here. Come on, don't get me like that.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys today about culture, and culture can be really different. There are several different things that can vary between cultures. You can have different languages, you can have different ways of living. As defined by Webster's Dictionary, culture is quality in a person or society that arises from a concern for what's regarded as right. So the culture that I can talk to you most easily about, one that's near and dear to my heart, is the culture of New England, which, although it's only 900 miles away from here, it's much different from the culture that you would find here in the South. And some of the things that you'll hear me talk about are things that would not be regarded acceptable here, especially in South Carolina. But when you visit the New England culture, for anyone who has, you'll notice that it's just sort of a way of life, and it's considered not only acceptable, but it's pretty much required. So one of the biggest differences, I think, is the language and the fact that people in New England don't pronounce their R's. The classic "Pakika" and "Habiad." That's just what happens. That's how we speak. But if you listen to a British person, you'll realize they don't say their R's either. It would not be uncommon to hear the exact same phrase only in a British accent. And if you listen, you will not hear the R's, and that's because the area of the country that's known as New England is the last remaining part of the people who came here from England. Everyone else migrated, and their accents have also migrated. Ours migrated much, but what got left was the R's. So some of the things you'll hear New Englanders say, phrases, include that, some people will say that they want to go to the Packy, or that they're going to have a wicked good weekend. And in the rest of the country, that phrase most people would probably think that was a negative thing, but the word wicked in New England means good. And that's just where it came from. I actually couldn't tell you, but it's pretty common to hear that. The other thing that's very different, especially in New England, and probably a lot of the North, is the fact that we don't say ma'am. And the reason that we don't say ma'am is because it's very much considered an insult, because if you call someone ma'am, you're insinuating that they're a lot older than you. So if you say ma'am, you better be talking to a judge or your actual grandmother, because that's just how it is. We are raised to say please and thank you, and Mr. and Mrs., but ma'am is just not part of the New England dialect. So, the other thing about New England culture is they do put a lot of stock in education. And there's a lot of people that are quite famous through history who were actually educated in New England. John F. Kennedy was educated at Harvard, as was Teddy Roosevelt and John Quincy Adams. So those are some pretty famous people that were in New England. And Mark Twain, who actually spent the later part of his years in New England, he actually passed away in Connecticut. One of his most favorite quotes is, in New York, they ask how much money does he have. In Philadelphia, they ask who are his parents. And in New England, they ask how much does he know. So it's just kind of another way of saying that it's education. They put a lot of stock into education. And a lot of, seemingly on the surface, New Englanders can be really rude, and they can be very much in a hurry. They much would prefer, when you go to get food out somewhere, people in New England would much rather have it be fast and accurate than slow and friendly. And that's just because everyone seems like they're in a hurry. But that's kind of all really on the surface. It's not actually the way that people truly are. It's just the way that they seem. And evidence of that can be seen when we talk about the Boston bombings. You will see in video, and you will see in different newspaper articles, the people who were part of that bombing, instead of running away from the bombing, they ran to it. They ran towards it to help one another out. There were actually very few fatalities for what should have been a pretty horrific mass casualty, and there were, I think, maybe 3. You can even see that there was one gentleman on the news that actually was holding someone's artery closed so that he would not bleed out, and he did not know that person. He just walked with him so that he didn't died. He didn't bleed out and die. So that's just sort of one of the things that is famous, and we can sort of use that to show evidence that New England is actually not a bunch of jerks, that sometimes we do love each other. And I guess I would just leave you guys with, we really do have love for one another, and despite having a confusing culture to the rest of the country, we really are fun-loving and wonderful and welcoming, and we're pretty much the most wicked piss of chowderheads you'll ever meet.